Hi.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Oh, look at you all dressed up, Chief.
Good.
Yeah, so that's an odd day for me.
Looking
How
clean,
is
looking
everyone?
clean.
Good.
So we're gonna give people about 5 minutes to get going. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Can everybody make sure they sign in for me, please? I'll put the link in the chat box.
Excuse me, Linnea, do you see
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yes, I'm putting it in now. And if people can remind other people as we start the meeting to sign in, that would be super helpful. We're just giving everybody a few minutes to get online. We'll start shortly. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is now 3:06. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey. If you could do me a favor, everybody who's just joining us, please make sure you click on the link and sign in for the meeting. Everybody who's just joining us, please click on the link and sign in, please. Chief, are you feeling comfortable to welcome everybody today?
Yeah, yes. Welcome. I apologize I wasn't here for the last meeting, but welcome everybody to this meeting, and definitely appreciate everybody wanting to be a part of this. It's something that's been long overdue that we've been, I guess, kind of struggling early on to get going, and I think we've got a little bit of momentum, and I hope we don't slow it down at this point. So again, welcome everybody. I appreciate everybody's willingness to work together so we can accomplish our goals. So thank you.
Thank you. So today, I have a little bit of an icebreaker for us to give people a chance to get online. And then we have a lot of logistics discussions we're gonna have today. And then we're gonna move into kind of introduce the news phase of what we're working on, of the reduction initiative. And so that is the bulk of our meeting today. And then we will have a discussion slash how we want to start drawing more people in to get some of this work done. So without further ado, are you all ready to start, or do you all want to wait a few more minutes, or how do you want to do it?
I'm ready to start if everybody else is. That'll be great.
Can I get some thumbs up, thumbs down? I saw one throw away up. Hey, all right, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, all right, sounds good. So this icebreaker is really interesting. I don't know. New hairstyle in it? No, this is actually my hair. I just usually hide my hair because people like to touch my hair. So I just hide it. That's another whole black hair thing. We'll talk about that another day. But but anyway, I typically hide my hair for just such a reason, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. So today, this is interesting. I saw this a while ago, and I thought it would be really cool for you all to see. And I hope that it kind of opens up the door to the new conversations we're about to start having. And so I hope you enjoy it. This is for a free discussion. There's no judgment. You can feel how you want to feel about it.
Thank you to Target for supporting PBS. In June 2020, in the wake of massive protests against police brutality and the death of George Floyd, a Black man who was killed during his arrest in Minneapolis, the New York Times made an unprecedented move. They announced that from then on, they'd be capitalizing the B in Black to describe people and cultures of African origin, both in the United States and elsewhere. It was a big moment not only for Black people, but also for the term Black itself. As is the case for many communities, Black isn't the only accepted word that's been used to describe Black people. There are other ethnonyms, or names that refer to ethnic or racial groups. Perhaps its most famous contemporary is African American, a term that has become somewhat less popular in recent years in the US. But let's take a look at the history of both terms. After all, if we've learned anything on this channel, it's that language is a constantly changing thing. Perhaps by digging deeper, we can gain a deeper understanding of just how difficult it is to encapsulate different peoples and cultures under one umbrella, and how what appears to be the end of a linguistic journey is often just the beginning. Before we get into the nuances of the different words people of African descent have used to describe themselves, we should probably start with, well, Africa itself. Not just the continent, but the word. Africa is a massive, massive chunk of Earth, and is home to many different cultures that don't necessarily see themselves as belonging to the same group. Indeed, it's the most diverse continent in the world. It is, after all, where our human history begins. The history of the word Africa is contentious, and scholars have been left with just theories. We know the ancient Romans coined the term, but we don't know where they got it from. Still, historians agree that the first known reference to Africa was around 2,000 years ago when the Romans used it to refer to Carthage, a rival empire located in present-day Tunisia and northern Algeria. Of course, the Romans weren't the first and only people to give this region a name. The ancient Greeks called the continent Libya. But what did the ancient Africans call themselves? Well, the many, many tribes and cultures there had a number of names and concepts to describe themselves. But ultimately, the Roman term Africa went out among Europeans, even though in the minds of ancient Romans, the name only applied to a small portion of the northern coast of the continent. That's possibly because as Europeans moved further south into the continent, they just brought the name with them. Thus, the word Africa came into popular usage. So that's where we get Africa, but now comes another piece of the puzzle. Where did we get the word Black, and how did it come to be thought of as interchangeable with African? It's important to get into because while the term Black is gaining in popularity today, the term African American actually rose to prominence because it was considered more appropriate than Black or colored. In other words, African American exists because it was once seen as a sort of remedy to the perceived inappropriateness of Black, a word that has historically been used for people of sub-Saharan African descent, particularly those who were enslaved. It was at a news conference in 1988 in the Chicago Hyatt Regency O'Hare Hotel that civil rights activist Reverend Jesse L. Jackson announced that Black people preferred to be called African American. Jackson said, "To be called African American has cultural integrity. It puts us in our proper historical context. Every ethnic group in this country has a reference to some land base, some historical culture base. African Americans have hit that level of cultural maturity." And why transition to African American from Black? Well, as Black Studies scholar E. Patrick Johnson notes, the word has a difficult history that goes back at least to the 14th century Europe, where Black took on a moral dimension. It was used to describe evil and corruption, something that was tainted or soiled. It came in handy when it came time to justify the enslavement of an entire group of people, and was used to associate dark-skinned people with immorality. It was used, in essence, to make it seem like they didn't have the same kind of souls. But during enslavement, Black was not the most prominent word used to describe people stolen from their homes in Africa. Colored people and Negro were much more common, and it wasn't until after emancipation in 1863 that Black came into more popular use. Though, as E. Patrick Johnson mentions, this wasn't necessarily positive. Instead, the increased prominence of the word Black was due to Black codes, which limited rights post-emancipation. The word being used to justify white supremacy meant that using it in any other context would be an act of reclamation, and like many words affecting marginalized groups that get reclaimed, not everyone in the community is down with it. But the word's complicated history also made it a potent tool for Black activists and revolutionaries to recontextualize its power, as a word that referenced a brutal history put in the hands of the people it once denigrated. This way of thinking found a powerful advocate in W.E.B. Du Bois in the early 20th century. Du Bois was a critic of racial biological essentialism, or the idea that people are born into different races that determine, among other things, their intelligence and potential. He published The Souls of Black Folk in 1903, a seminal work on race in America that boldly recontextualized the word Black. For an example of how it was received, the Nashville Banner wrote in its review that The Souls of Black Folk was dangerous for the Negro to read, for it will only incite discontent and fill his imagination with things that do not exist or things that should not bear upon his mind. Another person who embraced the word Black was Stokely Carmichael, an organizer who brought wide attention to the term Black Power during the June 1966 Meredith March against fear in Mississippi. At 19, Carmichael had been the youngest person arrested in the 1961 Freedom Riots and had gone on to become a prominent voice in Black activism. Black Power caught on and was embraced by the Black Panthers, which was founded in 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. They aligned with socialism and Marxist political philosophies, and they believed revolutionary change was required to root out racism. But some prominent factions of the movement weren't too keen on the term Black Power. Roy Wilkins, the then executive director of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, condemned it as anti-white separatism, and Martin Luther King Jr. said that the phrase falls on the ear as racism in reverse. But it's not a matter of figuring out who's right and who's wrong here. Rather, it's about realizing that these debates are not new and are likely to continue. An essay in 1904 by Black activist Fannie Barrier Williams tackled the subject of shedding the then popular term Negro in favor of colored or Afro-American. She preferred colored, saying that it was a name that is suggestive of progress towards respectful recognition. And indeed, colored would go on to become a prevalent term for Black people in the US. Its eventual association with Jim Crow, however, saw it become taboo in the ensuing decades. In the end, no one person's word is final. It's better and more accurate to think of this as an ongoing conversation about identity, inclusion, and language. Language is a powerful tool that can impress or empower. That's why slurs are so often at the center of debate, and why reclamation is such a tricky process. Black rising in popularity over African American doesn't put the period on the discussion so much as it introduces more question marks. Black scholars and sociologists are now asking, for example, if the word white should be capitalized as well. Some say it shouldn't be, as it refers to a skin color and not a shared experience, while others say this argument gives white people a pass on having to reckon with their identities. Not capitalizing it, in other words, makes it seem like less of an identity or a culture, and thus absolves white people from having to think of their actions in the collective like so many non-white communities are pushed to do. Whatever the future holds, the common thread in both past and present is the desire of marginalized people to use language to put a name to their experiences, empower themselves, and connect with one another. It's likely that will remain the case. If we've learned anything over the past few months, it's that a voice is a powerful thing that can change the world. It's important to be mindful of what you say. We'd like to thank Target for being a proud
Hi, welcome everyone. Please sign in for me if you get a chance. Please sign in. And welcome. So, what did you think about the video? Those of you that were able to see the whole thing. Hi, sociologist, yes.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I found it interesting. Yeah, that's like it basically shared an aspect that, you know, that we actually negotiate meanings, we contest meanings. I saw, you know, this idea that language is a part of culture that is disseminated, especially if there's a group that's dominant, then they take their meanings and then they they apply them to other people. And if those other people are subjugated, then those people or persons become, that term, or they take on that meaning. It's something that perhaps isn't always purposely done, but it's done through the social processes. In terms of contestation, in terms of the term Black, I thought about how that James Brown made that song. It says, "Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud." What that was James, Mr. Brown, was attempting to reclaim the name Black in a different light, so that those that we consider Black or African Americans wouldn't think of themselves in a negative light. They would say, hey, I'm just as good as the next person. So that's all I got for right now. If y'all want more, take my class.
Does anybody else have any thoughts? It's not a trick question. I mean, I hope that she wrapped up well enough to let you know it's really an open, fluid discussion about it.
Since I've missed a few, I'll say a quick word.
Sure.
As a white woman, that's something that I definitely struggled with, like how to identify people over time. And so I've just sort of learned, and that video is awesome. I learned a lot from that short little video. But I usually try to just identify people how they identify themselves. I mean, I'm in school for counseling, and that's how we kind of do with everything. But I really like that discussion on how the term has changed. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? It's one of the, I think, like in particular, I don't know if you are available to say anything, Ms. Barnes, but I think it's one of the best parts or most interesting parts about the NAACP or the NAACP, that it is one of the preeminent organizations that addresses race and disparities in our country, has a long history of it, and it's known as the Organization for Colored People, because at the time it was quite the progressive term. You want to say something, Ms. Barnes?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I did not see the whole video because my phone wasn't acting right, and I came in on the very end. So I don't think that I would be justifiable in, really trying to speak on something that I wasn't able to see the whole, thing and to really know. But I just want to say that when you addressed about the NAACP, the NAACP is the 112-year-old organization that was founded. But even when the NAACP was founded, it was not founded as a Black organization. It was founded as an organization for the people. And that's the reason why the term stands for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And over the years, people have took that word colored to mean Black people, but it does not necessarily mean all Black people. The NAACP was not even founded by all. It was Black and white people that founded this great organization in a 2-room apartment in, I think it was New York. And so I just always, try to tell people that we are not just a specific Black organization. We are a people of color. And so I will stop there.
No, I appreciate that's literally what I wanted you to talk about. That was perfect. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other thoughts, contributions? Judge Stackhouse says, I enjoyed it. I learned some history that I must confess I did not know. Yeah. Well, I think actually you all will have to make this decision yourselves. As we put this report and this plan together, you're going to have to decide how you want to be identified. Silence. How do we want to identify racial disparities? Are we going to call people African American or Black? What do we feel more comfortable with? What does it articulate? What does it say about us, about how we feel about the work that we're doing? So I think it's important to be mindful. And this is an opportunity to say, hey, we'll be mindful in this way in the future. I don't know, a lot of Black people, I think we all Black, I call people collectively Black, but I also probably use African American and I think I might have used Afro American when I was younger, very young for 5 minutes. But I think we all kind of have our own progression about what it is that we feel and what our history is and how maybe our family talks about it. So I just wanted to give everybody a chance, if you felt like saying anything, if you've progressed from being Black or African American or Negro, and what do you like to be called?
I would just share, like, for me, I don't know if it's really a what to be called, because I mean, I know I got myself and like my daughter, we tend to say things like, my Black don't look like your Black, or my African American don't look like your African American, or my African don't look like, so that's why it's hard to collectively say, can we come up with verbiage that would fit all? Because the truth is, my Black, my experience, my age, my gender, my religion, my educational background, my non-having an education, it doesn't, I mean, just, I could come up with a plethora of reasons why it just don't look the same. And how we respond don't look the same, because some of us, our motives are pure and some people's motives are not so pure. And so in saying all of that, I'm just saying it just doesn't always look the same. So when someone is looking at me and I may be assertive, some people might call it aggressive. Well, that looks different than a woman that may look just like me, be 55, might have, but she may be less outspoken, less assertive. But does that make her right, or does that make me wrong, or does that make me right or make her wrong? And so I just wanted to make sure that we're clear that if we're saying we're going to collectively come up with a name, how is that really ever going to be an accurate name to come up with? So I just wanted to share that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think Ms. Pierce, I think that was great. I think it was Fannie Lou Hamer that said something along the lines of, ain't I a woman too? In other words, the experience of Black women historically has been different than that of white women overall. And Black women have had to take on different roles on average than white women. So that has made them to actually become more assertive in some ways. At the same time, I'm just throwing this out there, Black men have looked down on some Black women for being assertive when it was the Black woman that had to be assertive in order to protect Black children. Because Black men could not stand up and be Black men because they would have been hung and the such like. And so, yes, the experience of Black people is not a unified experience. I've been called the whitest Black man that this one person has ever met in their lives. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I speak my mind. However, that's their perception of me. And hey, so yeah, one term, look, we need to recognize people however they want to be recognized, but it's not a unified experience
Anyone else? So is it Petin?
It's Petin.
Petin. I taught my children that we are brown. However, I embrace the word Black because I realize the world uses it. So when they hear it, they'd be proud. However, I see myself as brown. You want to talk about that for a second?
Well,
I mean, you don't have to.
After listening to David Craig, I agree with him, and I appreciate him for speaking on African American women and their experiences. However, yes, in my home, I do refer to myself as brown, not as a race, but as a color, because I am brown. My daughter's brown. My son is brown. However, we are all different shades of brown. But I think the most important thing is making them be proud of their race as a whole. So that matter, no matter what word is used, whether it's African American, Black, well, some words I hope wouldn't be used, but whatever word is used, they just be proud of it. They won't look at it like an issue. So it doesn't really bother me what word we use, as long as we're, it's how we're treated, more importantly, than the word we come up with.
Okay, that's good. All right, so does anybody else have anything else to say, or are we ready to move on? I'm very proud of you all. This is a good discussion before we start racial equity and moving in that direction. Go ahead, Dr. Craig, have a moment.
Yeah, if I could say one more thing. Years ago, I was working polls, Wayne County Public Library. And I was asked a question, do I think I'm a racist? It was a question that threw me off. And I said, no, I don't. And the lady that asked me that question, she said that the look on my face was golden. I said, but what I tell Black people, or what I tell people when they ask me when will Black people be equal, I tell them we will be equal. We will never be made equal by white people making Black people equal. We will be equal when we assert our equality. And at first, the lady, she smiled, because encoded in that is something, is a subtle suggestion that Black folks have not asserted their equality. However, also encoded in that is that when Black folks demand that they are treated equally, when Black folks act in an equal manner, that's when other people will treat them as their equals. So I would just say that too. The only way to get away from people being Black and white is to treat people equally. And the only way to treat people equally is to examine and actually see how race plays out.
I guess that's why you get paid the big bucks. All right, thank you. So, and the only other thing that I want to add to this discussion really quickly is that as I think one of the pieces that was illuminated in the video was about how communities of color typically, or people of color, often are defined culturally and ethnically by their skin tone, right? But that white folks don't necessarily have that experience or knowledge base. So part of the work that we do here is that we all not only have to acknowledge that there's racial disparities, but that we also have to acknowledge that maybe that's not the experience or knowledge that I have. And so what we're trying to do is to sometimes what people think we already know naturally, or you should know naturally, you don't know naturally. And so this is an opportunity for us, for you all, to be able to define some problems that affect you, not only because of your color or your race, but also some of your cultural and ethnic background differences that might be Maybe some things get lost in translation, or maybe some people see things differently from different perspectives. Maybe people see poverty differently. Maybe people see housing differently. Maybe people see economics differently. And so this is our opportunity to bring that in and go, hey, have you looked at it from this lens, from this perspective? And this is what my perspective was. This is what my family's perspective was. This is my neighborhood's perspective is. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that's also part of acknowledging the other thing, is to go, hey, I never actually looked at it that way before. Okay, we're moving on.
Miss Foster, can I ask
Yes.
you a question?
Yes.
The example you just gave as to what would be a great opportunity to share. Is this something that once we put this together and we start engaging with the youth, would that be a good type of activity for the youth to actually get up and explain and be able to share their level of this, what my neighborhood looks like, this is how I feel morning to morning, day to day, and then allow that same thought process to come from our law enforcement group? And so that would be so should we be putting together programs so that when we finally get to what this initiative is going to do for our community and for our children, would that be a great activity? Because even to be real honest, even as we all sit here as adults, again, like I just said, my experience is not going to look the same as an individual that was born in 2005
Absolutely.
and is a male and is Black. Absolutely. Those experiences would never look the same.
Absolutely. Yes, that is part of what we will do. That is part of it. That's part of the reason why this group is like the leader group, right, for the whole community. And so you all are I'm going to bring up things and we're going to go, I want to continue to explore that. I want to continue to use that. And this is a great thing that we need to do, because oftentimes things kind of get all wrapped up in one thing. So it might appear, or it might say, oh, well, it's only Black people that are having this experience, or it's only Latin people that are having this experience. But really, it could be an experience of a neighborhood. It could be an experience of a community. It could be an experience of people born after 2010, right? It could just be that lived experience. And so we want to define it better and then figure out how that connects to policy, how that connects to problems, how that connects to programs, and what we can do, what we can brainstorm together, what kind of solutions we can create to address the disparity. So you're absolutely right. It is a great thing for young people to do, because you as an adult don't have their same experience. I absolutely agree with you. And I think we need to, that's part of the reason why some of the things we're going to talk about later on today is going to be about like setting up focus groups and having conversations with young people so they can actually tell us themselves what their experience is, and that you all as a body, a collective body, can then make decisions. Does that make sense? So I agree with you, absolutely. Is that something other people are interested in being a part of? Everybody's on mute, by the way, just to let you know. Hello? Yes, I'm interested. Okay, great. All right, so let's move on with the agenda, if you all don't mind. So our agenda today obviously is making sure everybody's signed in, and we have some updates, some data updates. Dr. Craig and Mr. Pittman have some data updates. Your co-chairs have been working hard for the month that we were off, so I'll let you all take it over from here.
That's going to have to be Mr. Pittman.
Happy to chime in. I'm joining you poolside from Charlotte. I'm here for my nephew's being dedicated this weekend, so we decided to make a weekend out of it. So if you hear some splashing and some playing, that's probably my 3-year-old. So we've been working with the data question, and what we've kind of been looking at is making sure that we're getting the most accurate data that we can, and that when we start actually analyzing to see where the problem is, we're not looking at duplicate data, we're not looking at incomplete data. So what we've got in process right now is a memorandum of understanding that will primarily be between this grant initiative as a whole, the Division of Juvenile Justice from the Department of Public Safety, and Wayne County Public Schools. We've got a draft that is being circulated of that memorandum to share data. So essentially what's going to happen is that the Division of Juvenile Justice, who houses pretty much all of the court and community program data, is going to act as our data house to start with. They will pull their own data, which is the super secret juvenile data that is protected and cannot be released in its raw form. The Wayne County Public Schools is going to release to them their complete data set, which includes what they call Power School. That's the program that they use. But that will be all disciplinary responses to include suspensions, expulsions, and any referral to court, referral to law enforcement type activity. They're going to send that data to the Division of Juvenile Justice as well, pursuant to this MOU. Once DJJ has that data, they're going to combine the two data sets together. Part of what we're asking them to do in that process is create a unique identifier, which is unique to our initiative. So in other words, every student or child or person who passes through any of the data, currently they have 2 ID numbers. They have what's called an NC Joint ID number, which is the DJJ data set, and then they have a Power School ID number, which is Wayne County Public Schools. DJJ is going to create a third identifier off of those 2, merging those 2 together, which will be our unique identifier, so that when we get data, which will then be released to Linnea and her team for analysis and work, that data is going to be identified only by that unique identifier. Once we have that in place, then we will begin to do the analysis, look at the questions, and look at the problems. I think we, as the co-chairs, we discussed it during our last meeting, that we kind of started this out looking at data looking at what we were asking for in data a certain way. And then we realized that what we really want and what we really think this community needs is a much broader approach to that data. And we think that the process that we've laid out, the plan that we've got in place, is going to give us the most broad set of data that we can for Goldsboro and Wayne County. It's going to give us the most accurate data we can for Goldsboro and Wayne County, and it's going to give us the best ability to look at the racial and ethnic disparity problem, find where it exists, how it exists, and how we can best respond to it. The problem, I'll say, on the backside of that is that it's going to be a little bit more of a time-consuming process for us to get the data together. Obviously, we're some time into this grant. I joked the other day during the co-chairs meeting that if we just ignore 2020, we're actually on schedule, and that's about right. And I think that's where we're going to be. We hope to have that MOU approved by the attorneys from DJJ and Wayne County Public Schools. And I believe, Linnea, we said October would be when we were trying to have that approved. Right. And once that MOU is approved, the data shouldn't take more than a month or 2 to be produced and sent to us so that we can begin our process. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a full data set with all of everything we need, and we can begin actually running the data, working the problem. Any questions, comments, concerns on that?
Dr. Craig, did you have any thoughts or?
Yes, my understanding is that once we begin to analyze that data and we take that to the community, we'll then be also getting feedback from focus groups, interviews, and we'll also be conducting some surveys to supplement our analysis.
And one of the things I think about getting data from DJJ is that this will be a very clean data set, and will really mean that no one is touching it or can touch it. So for us, that will be really powerful in that, we're really going to get some really valuable data, and we'll also be able to have some supplementary data that DJJ collects so that can kind of give us some even more information. So I hope that you all can be a little patient with this data challenge that we have, because I think we're about to do some groundbreaking work that will set the bar for what data analysis, especially in terms of racial disparities in North Carolina, can look like. We've had some really interesting discussions. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions or thoughts about it. I'm excited.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Not trying to mess anything. What happens to the data that law enforcement will have for contacts with juveniles that doesn't involve the school system, that's outside of the school system, and doesn't result in being thrown into the juvenile justice system? If I've got it, it's non-law enforcement, it's an opportunity where it could be a law enforcement matter to where the officers have a decision to make. They can either proceed down the road of putting the child into the court system or the juvenile justice system, or we ourselves do a diversion to a different entity and don't go down that road. How does that data get pulled in? If it doesn't go through the school system, how does that get pulled in? That's kind of like a third element for mine.
So you all have already provided me, you and the sheriff's department, but the majority of the data that I have right now is only in school. I think it's school related. And so that might be, so what you needed to do, everyone, from what I understand, and generally how this operates, is that when an officer makes contact with someone, in general, they're supposed to complete a juvenile contact form, even if you redirect. If you completed that form, if that form was completed, then I should be able to get records from JJ.
And will there be enough information with the other data that's merged between DJJ and the school system? Will those identifiers allow, because we could be doing, I don't want to do duplicate entries. I don't think anybody wants duplicate entries. We'll be able to take our contact sheet and we should be able to determine that we're not duplicating something that may already be in the system. The individual might be in the system, okay?
That's literally what this is about, that we will be able to not only de-identify, but de-duplicate. Because technically you could, one incident could hit 2 or 3, 4 times, depending on the different systems, right? So we would want to know that it was the same incident, if it's at all possible. We want to know if an officer arrested somebody at school and they ended up, in the court system, and maybe potentially mental health, or who knows what all other system connections it could be. We want to make sure that we know that it was that same incident and that same person.
And I think the way we're looking at this data, we should be able to, because I don't think that the situations where Goldsboro Police interacts with a juvenile and does not refer to court, does not refer to any formal court service, we should be able to add those contact records in when we get our data together, because that's not something that's going to be reported at either scene or either source, to make sure that we are getting that full accurate picture. Because I know there's a lot of, my personal favorite is when marijuana's ground out on the side of the road under a boot. That's not going to be reported in a DJJ database because that's not that type of an action. But we should be looking at when law enforcement is doing that or similar actions and not sending it through the formal system versus when they are. So we'll add all that, should be able to add all that data together.
Okay.
We should, and I think towards the conclusion of the MOU conversation, we will have agreed on what data and how the data looks for each set. And then that set all of you, all of the agencies that will be providing data will then be asked to make sure that the data set that you provided matches or it looks similar. Then we can compare apples and oranges appropriately, if that makes sense. Okay, does anybody else have any questions besides the co-chairs? They have been fighting and working this out for a while. I promise you, the month of July, we worked. We worked. Any thoughts, questions? I know there was a lot of discussion before about data, who was getting it, what was the source? Was the data, did the data have integrity in general? So I just want to make sure that we are all addressing those questions ahead of time and directly as much as we can.
Yeah, I hesitated to ask a question because I've missed, the last two, but if there's some sort of IRB or who is analyzing this data and making sure, I was going to ask the validity and reliability and all that sort of thing.
So I think that's part of what we're, a little bit of background is, so initially we started this data conversation with Judge James, and Judge James made a request of DJJ to provide system level data about how young people were going through the juvenile justice system in terms of programs, and also trying to figure out the school to prison pipeline. So we were having a whole conversation about that. And then as we were getting closer and as we started requesting data, we ran against the same question that you're asking with Wayne County Public Schools providing data and DJJ providing data, that they were requesting an IRB process to make sure that we were protecting the young people that were part of this. So the solution that we have arrived at is that the DJJ has the ability to meet the basic requirements of identification and privacy. And so we will use several different mechanisms to make sure that the identity of the young people is protected. And that includes like using alternatives to locations instead of addresses. We'll use a unique identifier, and DJJ is going to do and make sure that what we're going to do is identify locations by public and private as opposed to specific locations. So we have several things that we are working out in the MOU specifically to make sure that we are protecting our subjects of our data dive. Any other thoughts, or does anybody else want to add something to that? So DJJ is our IRB and our institutional review board. Okay, is that good? Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions about that? That was a big thing. It's a lot of work that's going to be done on that data. So we have basically completely changed the scope of our data conversation in question, and that's going to again take additional time and work, not only on my part but on the co-chair's part. So we'll have to come back and redefine what the true scope now of what this data conversation will be. We'll be doing that over the next couple months behind the scenes, the co-chairs. Okay, are we ready to move on? Thumbs up, thumbs down, unless anybody else has any big questions. This conversation was for you all, so we have full transparency and understanding of what's happening. Okay, everybody feels comfortable. Good. All right, good. So the next item is training. So as some of you all remember, when we first started having our conversations about what the grant was about and what this DMC reduction plan was going to be, one of the first components that that we needed to address is training. We need everybody to be on the same page. We need everybody to be using common language and having some common understanding. And so that is what this training component is about. This is one of the biggest things, and we really need to get it done, and we need it to be successful. We need to get as many people that are on this committee to attend these trainings, and we need everybody in the community to be a part of these trainings, because this is how we will then start to have everybody ready to start sharing all their suggestions and plan ideas or strategies to reduce DMC. So our first training that we have planned is the training that I'm going to do. It's going to be a DMC 101, that's disproportionate minority contact 101. And I will do that at our next meeting, which is September 20th. And I'm going to ask you to give me 2 extra hours so that we can get it all done in one day. It's typically a day-long training, but I'm going to condense it down into 4 hours. So I'd like to start at 12 and end at 4 if that's possible. I'd like to know what you all think about that, if that time is going to work. Thoughts, questions?
My calendar shows September 20th as a Monday.
Is it?
That's what my calendar shows.
Your calendar could be right. I don't. Yeah, that's the fun thing about calendars. They don't always move. So that should be, I guess that should be September 24th. Thank you for correcting me.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody, the 24th?
If we're gonna, I mean, this is just my suggestion, not trying to take up people's
No.
weekends, but if we're gonna do 4 hours, is there a possibility of doing it on a weekend? Because for, like myself, if I do that, I have to take half a day off of work, which not saying I can't, but it would just make it easier if it was a weekend.
I'm open. It's up to you all what you all want to do. I just thought that the time that's our normal date. I believe that's our normal meeting day. 1, 2, 3. No, actually our normal meeting day is September 17th. So I could technically do 2 weeks. We could do 2 weeks back to back. I don't know if people want to do that, or would it be better to maybe try to do September 18th? It's up to you all.
But since no one's responding, then just leave it to the 17th and do the 4, and I can either make a decision to take off half a day or not. That would be, I guess, what I feel like if you're not getting any responses.
Anyone else?
Are we discussing putting it on back on the 17th?
Yes, that's our normal meeting day, the 17th. I don't know where I got the 20th from, but it's the 17th is our normal meeting day.
Now, do you say that this is going to be a 2-part training?
I can make it 2-part, but it's really a whole day training.
So you're doing it in 4 hours?
Yeah, I'm just going to cut some of it down and try to get it done in one afternoon.
I was thinking for those people that have to take off work, that if possible, we could do what I believe you alluded to earlier, having 2 different sessions, one on a weekday and one on a weekend.
No, we could either do it on the weekend or on a weekday.
Okay,
one or the
you
other.
were alluding to 2. Okay.
Right. I said, or I could do 2. We could do 2-hour sessions and like do back to back, like 2 Fridays or 2, you know.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Hi, I'm also wondering, could you record it? So for those who would have to take off, they could have it recorded? If you did the 4 hour?
I can record it, but I'm hesitant to do that because this is one opportunity for you all to really actually start working together. The training is kind of a collective group thing of what you all know and me kind of sharing with you. So it doesn't really work if you just kind of watch me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was talking about those that participate, but the ones that could not participate, if it could be recorded.
Yeah, I mean, I can record it. I can do that. I was going to record it. I just don't know if I was planning on sharing it, but okay.
One of your chairs said he can't do the 17th, so you may want to pick another Friday. He put it in the group chat. Dustin Pittman said he can't do the 17th.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. I've got a court hearing on a Friday, believe it or not.
I believe it. But I mean, I think you have a better understanding in general of what juvenile justice is. But some people really need a lot, you really need to kind of have a catch up so that we can specifically really focus in on what DMC is and what we're going to do about it. So I'm open, and I probably shouldn't be so open, but I really want you all to, would it be better if I did a doodle poll?
So let me speak up.
Yeah, everybody needs to speak.
Yeah, I don't want to do the weekend. I just don't. I mean, I don't get enough time off with my kids as is. So I don't want to do the weekend for training. I just don't.
Okay.
So today, the poll you were just talking about, now we're trying to find a day to do 4 hours.
If the 17th won't work so how about this? Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down on everybody who the 17th can work? No, I got one. Is that a no, Dustin? Is that X a no? Okay. I see you, Stephanie. Okay, so I'm seeing the majority are saying yes. So how about this? I'll go ahead and it looks like most people can do the 17th. So let's plan on the 17th as the plan, and then I'll try to we can do a makeup day. For those who aren't, because we really do need to get everybody, as many people as possible who are going to be making decisions, who are going to be trying to influence this process, to be at the table and to learn together as much as possible. I want to empower you with information so that you can make good contributions to the process. Is that a nice way to say it?
Well, wouldn't it behoove us, since most people seem to be okay with the workday period, wouldn't it be better to try then the 24th, seeing that Mr. Pittman, which is a part of the huge influence because he's the chairperson, is already saying he can't. Wouldn't it be better for you to ask us all the thumbs up if we can do the 24th? It's still a Friday.
I'm okay with that. Would you like to? So who's available on the 24th? 24th is positive. 24th is positive. 24th is positive. '24th is positive. Okay. Is there how many are no for the 24th? Absolutely not for the 24th. Dustin, are you still no on the 24th as well?
I'm good for the 24th.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll do the 24th. I can be worked with.
Excuse me, Linnea,
Yes.
and what time would that be?
So I will leave that up to you all as well. I was thinking the afternoon. Would it be better to do the morning? Get it over with? I was thinking 12 to 4.
I'll do 12 to 4, but I prefer mornings. But I'll do
For
whatever.
mornings too.
You prefer mornings too, Ms. Jones?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So can I get a thumbs up on morning? That's so scary.
Oh,
All right, so mornings it is. So how early is morning? Can we start at 10? Can we start at 9? What would be preferable?
I thought you said 8 to 12.
Oh Lord. If you, it's only one occasion. I'll try to play along.
Nine to 1.
Lord Jesus.
But let's just go. Why don't
10 to
you ask all for 9 to 1 or all 8 to 12?
9 to
I can
1
do
or
9 to
10
1
to
as
2.
well. Yeah.
9 to 1. I can do 9. I can make
9
9
to 1
work.
or 10 to 2. Okay.
Is 9 to 1 acceptable?
Ms. Foster.
Yes.
Now you're talking about on Friday, September 24th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, when I asked what time, basically what I was assuming that it was going to be 3 o'clock or after. I definitely can't do any mornings at all, but I can watch what you all record and stuff. Okay.
All right. So back to the board. So let's try this again. Is our afternoons possible on the 24th, or does I see a majority on the morning, but you know, I'll vote for the afternoon if I have a choice, but I'm gonna be where I gotta be. So you all tell me, what would you prefer? Thumbs up for morning, thumbs down, or no, let me ask this question. Dr. Craig, you cannot do mornings at all.
No, I teach and I have obligations at at my employer.
Okay, that's fine. So how late morning or how afternoon, like is that after 1 o'clock or does it have to be 3-ish for you?
I can be in place approximately 1 o'clock. I can make that happen.
Okay. Can we accommodate 1 to 4, 1 to 5? Or is that not good? So thumbs up, 1 to 5. One to five. Okay, I'm seeing positives in general or no. All right, so let's do 1 to 5 on the 24th. And I will, and depending on the turnout, we will do a follow-up if we need to, and I will record it. Okay. Put that down. So that will be invitation only. And what I would ask is that you all invite people who you feel like need to be in the room to help us be able to do some DMC work. So what DMC work is, it is a lot of data analysis. We're going to be looking at quite a bit of data. We're going to be talking about different terminology, and I'll be explaining different things and I'll introduce a few best practices and some things like that. So it's going to be quick and dirty, but the idea is that you all will then be able to differentiate different programs and different requirements, and you'll have a better understanding of what data we are going to focus on. There'll be a lot of, you know, we have conversations about race and disparities and things like that all the time, but we're really going to focus in specifically on what DMC, what RED is, and what activities and what kind of area of activities we can work on specifically to address these issues. So be prepared to really work and pay attention. So The next training will be racial equity with Dr. David Craig. Do you want to take over, Dr. Craig?
I do not want to take over, but I can explain what we're planning to do.
Okay.
So basically, what I proposed is that we will watch two segments of a video series. The video series is called Race, the Power of an Illusion. And the two sections that we're going to view is the first one will be the story we tell, and the second one will be the house we live in. Each of these sections take about an hour a piece to view. So what I'm planning to do is to, on one Friday, we'll view the story we tell, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And then on another Friday, we will view the house we live in, and we'll open it up for discussion. I will have some pre-written questions that, we'll use to prod one another, as well as, just open it up for discussion. And that'll be our racial equity training, if that's acceptable to you all. So we're talking about maybe 2 hours or maybe a little bit more on 2 different days.
Yes.
Yes. Thoughts?
Hold on really quick. I'm sorry. I tell you, the joy of working at home sometimes. Okay. So yeah, that's fine, Dr. Craig. I think that would be good. So the idea behind racial equity class, I know some of you all have already participated or done it before, but this is an opportunity for us to, again, define our language, figure out how we're communicating, understanding some of the background issues that we're going to be dealing with in terms of race, and starting to open up the conversation, because obviously we're here to have conversations about race and disparities. And so we want to start on the same page and the same footing together. So what I'm thinking is, like what Dr. Craig said, is that we'll do 2 sessions. So the co-chairs, I think we can come up with a couple of date possibilities, and then we'll, but I'm thinking we're still trying to get everything done, have all these trainings done by the end of October, because we are so far behind. Thoughts? No one's saying anything. So we'll need people to register. These meetings are going to be via Zoom, and for obvious reasons. So what I'll do is I'll do a registration link, and then we need to send it out, and we need to get as many people signed up as possible. And let me just say this, that it might feel like you don't need to do these kind of trainings, but it's important, because if we don't get as many people with the same ideas, same knowledge, it's really gonna slow us down when it's time to start planning. So it's really important everybody does their best to be here for these days. Okay. Anybody else have any questions about that? And the last piece of training that we really need to spend some time with is the Know Your Rights training. The Know Your Rights training is for young people. That is for our people in school and community groups. And I believe most people have met BJ Council. She does the UN 50 training. And so, which is a Know Your Rights training, and that needs to be scheduled. We need to get those scheduled, and we need to get about 200 kids enrolled in that program as quickly as possible for the fall. So, and that will be, I believe the idea was to have those sessions scheduled with Wayne County Public Schools and to have them scheduled at different community groups around Goldsboro and Wayne. So if anybody has any groups or young people that would benefit or would like to participate in those trainings, or you'd like to host a training, let me know or let Chief know, and we can schedule those trainings.
Okay, so I'm excited to see us doing these trainings, Ms. Foster.
Cool.
But my biggest, and I guess maybe you will share this in that first training. I'm still trying to figure out in my head when we gonna get to the impacting of the youth, which I thought was the main focus. So I know earlier when Mr. Pittman did his thing, he talked about a timeline. Does that timeline include when this is gonna really roll out and become live and start touching those youth that need it? Or are we looking at, it might be almost a year for us to do all of this, and then that's gonna be, we start seeing the impact?
I think so. I think the question, so first of all, you all haven't defined what it is you want the impact to be to the kids. That's first. You all as a community have not said, I want to reduce DMC by this number, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z to get that thing done. Is that true? I mean, just let's check in.
Yes, if I may, Ms. Foster. So that's why we need to get the data and look at the data so we can see where the problem, what the potential problems and issues lie. And once we do that, then we can actually make a reasonable assessment in terms of what it is we want to accomplish. Yeah, generically, we can say we want to reduce police and minority youth contact. We want to do that. However, we really need to look at the data before we actually say, okay, here's how we're going to do it, if that makes sense. And we need to have community buy-in. So once we look at the data and we take that data to the community and we present them with what we find, then we can get back more feedback from the community. And because this just shouldn't be, on just a small group of people. We have to have total community, well, not total community buy-in, but we have to have community buy-in. Does that make sense, Ms. Pierce?
Yeah, it does. I just, like I said, I guess, and I realize that we're only meeting once a month, and I realize we got to do the trainings, but yeah, I guess I'm just one of those. I like to also just see progression. I like to see, see that something's going. But my other concern will be, and I'm just, my other concern is if we don't get the data. Does this program die, or do we still do something? Like, can we make the definition, or can we define how we want to impact teams if we don't ever get the data? If we, let's just say we never see the true data, are we still as a collective group and still trying to get the other people to come and know that it even exists? Are we going to actually see this program, this grant influence our community?
Yeah, I can answer that, but I can't answer it for you. So did you want to answer, Chief? Is that?
I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen enough of the data right now, even though it hasn't been sifted through or separated. I don't need data to move this forward. I think we say we need to improve, and we can benchmark it ourselves. The data is great to start with, but if we don't get the data, I don't want anybody to think that we're going to abandon this. We're not going to abandon. I'm not going to abandon it. I think we're going to move forward with it. Data is good to where we can gauge that we're making progress. but I think we've seen enough of the data, at least I have, to know that we can make progress regardless of whether or not we got the data.
And I agree. I'm sorry. And I agree with Chief West. I agree totally. I think where the issue, Ms. Pierce, is that we, since the inception of this study, which was before I came before I got involved, it was expanded upon. And once it was expanded upon, you know, we have to do our due diligence to make sure it's done right. So, you know, but I agree with Chief. If we get back the data and it's garbage, which I don't think it's going to be, we're going to go with what we have. And I'm quite sure that we're going to make this thing happen.
Okay, thank you all.
And I think one of the questions you're asking is really important, because I think some people, when you join committees like this, typically it's like, oh, we're gonna come up with a program to do something, right? And the program is like, oh, we're gonna build new playgrounds, and when do we have a playground ready to go live, right? Or when are we gonna have a groundbreaking? That's not what this is, right? Part of the problem when people do those kind of programs is that you really can't see the impact or the change. You'll have people show up, and you know, they'll have people start digging in the ground, and they'll lay out sand and all those great things, but it's not actually what people needed to change the outcome, to change what the chief is being defined by, to change what the schools get defined by. The whole point of this is to say, we can do this differently than the way we've been doing it, but we have to do it in the most educated approach possible, right? And so what we're saying is that maybe the way we've been doing it, we can approach it differently now. And the difference is we know that this creates this problem, or we know this develops this, because really the outcomes that we're really looking for are not necessarily that the kids change. The outcomes is that we as the system change. And we stop doing things to the kids, or we start setting the kids up for success more often than not. Yeah? So while, yeah, the kids are going to benefit in the long term, the kids aren't necessarily responsible for this problem nor the solution. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It makes sense what you're saying, yes.
Okay.
And I totally understand. I mean, I still do want to see us though. I guess I just want to see something on paper. I want to see something other than just these discussions that, yeah, I mean, maybe some people seen some data. I haven't seen any data. All I've seen is discussion. So that just kind of makes me feel like I'm four or five times at a meeting, and I feel like we're doing the same thing. And that's just where I'm at. And so, yeah, I just want to start seeing something, an outline, something that's doing something. Yeah, that's all I was asking, but I'm fine. Thank you.
No, I think when we have the DMC 101, that's part of it, is that you're going to start seeing what the data should look like, how it should be presented to you, how you should analyze it. That will give you a whole lot more information. That's part of the reason why I'm saying we need to get everybody at the table to look at the information, to look at the data, because I'm going to share with you some data. I'm not going to share with you all of it, but I'm going to share with you some of it, because some of it's available. It's just publicly available data. Most people don't know where to find it or see it, but it's available. And so I'm going to show it to you, and then I'm going to show you what it means. And then what we can do right now to start addressing it. Because my intention is that you will actually probably see your data change quickly. Actually, there's some things I think Chief already knows that he can change quickly, that we're going to have maximum impact. Probably already have made some decisions that are going to make some real big impact coming this year. So I think I think people will be pleasantly surprised. And so I just want to give everybody a chance to know those, so that you know what you should be looking for to evaluate if your city, if your county is moving in a direction that you like. I hope that makes sense. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Because I understand this is not, it's not sexy and that we're gonna be marching down the street, right? You're not gonna see that, but you will see there will be some data changes. And that's the great outcome, because then you can stop saying, oh, this is what disproportionate, I'm always getting stopped. Now we'll be able to say, this is what always getting stopped looks like. This is what it shows. And this is how we can do something to prevent it or move it forward. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
And this, Kelvin Stallings, and this might be my sheer ignorance, but is somebody putting together, when you say this is what being stopped and us moving in towards progression, is there somebody coming and collectively gathering baselines in terms of talking about data?
That's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, so
we are evaluating, we will be evaluating data for the last 5 years.
Okay. So
you will have probably more than you ever wanted to know in terms of data by the end of this. And to be honest with you, you have so many people who are interested in what we are doing that it's so amazing that what you all are about to do. So Judge Stackhouse and Judge James, they had a lot of questions. That we've had a whole lot of questions asked, which is why your data set has grown tremendously over these last couple months. That's why we had such a conversation about data, but it really is going to, I think it's going to give you a lot of tools, a lot of places that you can focus. Like potentially you all will want to look at how mental health, how young people are getting introduced into the mental health system, how that works. You might want to ask questions about, you know, how SROs, it'll be so many, it'll cross so many different work groups that you'll have a lot out of it.
So who is determining these baselines, if I may ask?
Who is determining? That will be me primarily, and a small group of data folks that are interested in data. We have some agreements between these organizations of what data can be shared, and they can be shared in report form, but we are not sharing it, the raw data with everyone, to protect the subjects or to protect the young people in particular. But you will have some baseline reporting, and you will see some things progress, and you will make, my goal is that you all will then start to make policy recommendations to the chief and to the sheriff and to others as to what policies you all would like to change and redefine.
Okay. And so once these baselines are determined and we have what we call our progression point, are we ever going to have public hearings and presentations to the public so they can provide their buy-in to the program?
I intend that that this will be publicly, that after the, I guess what you could say my assessment and analysis and recommendations, after that is completed, yes, I would like you all to make decisions about how you would like it to be shared with the public. That is you all's decision as this committee, how you all want to share it, how you all want to roll it out, what you want to do with it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a possible, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. This is good. I'm glad y'all finally woke up.
Go ahead, Ms. Steph.
I was going to say, thank you. Is there a possibility for any sort of subcommittee or anything to also be included? Some of us are sworn in by the court system for those same systems. Some of us are interested in data, go to school for that. And I think a lot of us are questioning who is analyzing the data. How are we being ensured that the data being presented is accurate? Is there any way for, anyone involved in this process outside of DJJ and the chief and you, Ms. Foster, to know how that's happening or being a part of that process?
Can I address?
Sure.
So,
I would
yeah.
actually like it if you and Mr. Pittman would get both of y'all come on.
Yes. So this kind of addresses what you brought up, Miss Stephanie, as well as what you brought up, Mr. Kevin. Mr. Pittman and myself will be working with Ms. Foster to do this data analysis, and potentially some other people. And what I can tell you about us, and I think you particularly, Kevin, know this about me, is that I'm going to be as thorough as I can. And, I'm a real data analyst. So the bottom line is, unless we totally miss something, you can believe in the product.
I did not realize that you guys are also part of the data analysis, so I appreciate that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, and what my ultimate, so after I start to share, or after we start to share what the baseline data is, what I've learned, then you all will make a decision about what kind of subcommittees you do want to continue to move forward with this, because this isn't just a one-time thing. This is a long-term plan of how we're going to work and manage these problems, right? Because just because we get this particular thing solved, or we get 3 things done, doesn't mean that everything is going to be done. So then I would recommend that you all do have a data analysis, or maybe a data and policy subcommittee that will then be in charge of reviewing data on an ongoing basis. But you all might have to have some privacy agreements and other things like that too, as you move forward. But that's, again, a recommendation after we have done our first pass and everybody gets to see it and ask questions. And then I'm sure somebody's going to say, hey, let's look at this, let's look at that. So does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. That was good. I'm glad y'all woke up. I was waiting for people to have something to say. I couldn't believe it. All right, anything else? No? Okay. So moving on really quickly. So, and this is actually perfect timing. So I just wanted to kind of recap with everybody that we are working on a RED reduction plan. That's the first outcome that we have that we are going to report as part of this grant. We're actually going to develop a plan, and part of the plan will include data analysis, our data analysis and assessment. And it will include the training and then some RED DMC best practices that we can recommend. We're also going to recommend, I'm going to recommend that you all use a model, a community engagement model called asset-based community development, which is about using the community grassroots system that you all have in place, because you all have a very active community structure and support groups going on, and then community engagement, so that all of these pieces will end up in your RED reduction plan. And that should be what this committee puts forward to the whole community of Goldsboro and Wayne as to how we want to reduce RED DMC collectively together from now on. And that will then go to your city council and your county commission, and hopefully they will say, yes, we will adopt it and we will support it, and what these are the things we need to do to support it. Does that make sense? Anyone? Does that kind of give people a better understanding of what we're doing and the goals that we're working on?
Yes, ma'am. That what you just said was mainly what I was looking for.
Okay.
Like, what were the steps to get to the community? And I'm ready for us to get to the community, I guess.
Right. So this is where we're going. So that's a big piece of why we're talking about data analysis and assessment. That's why we're in this so deep, so that we're not just going, oh, this is what the numbers, these are what the arrest reports are. We want to have context. We want to be able to say, this is what happened and this is why it happened. If we saw an uptick in this, it's because we, like, for instance, what was it, a couple of meetings ago, we had a conversation about catalytic converters being stolen. That if we see a big uptick in something, then there needs to be some explanation as to why, and what's the strategy that you want to do to address it. That's what we're trying to work towards. Does that make sense to everybody? Nobody's commenting.
Yes.
Okay. So for this, the data analysis and assessment portion in particular, this is where we're going to start to have surveys that go out, and we're going to have focus groups, and we're going to have interviews that happen. And so I would like really for people to, like, maybe Ms. Pierce, maybe you can help set up a focus group just for young people, so that we can have a conversation about what their interactions are with law enforcement and with the justice system, their perceptions of what they think they need and what they think the answers could possibly be. I'd like to also set up focus groups with maybe some community groups, church groups, and I'd like to set up some with SROs and also law enforcement that deal with young people. I'd like to have conversations with the court staff, so that we can have some understanding of what what life is like for them. So overall, I'd like to see for the next maybe 2-3 months, I'd like to be scheduling these sessions. Sometimes it'll just be me, sometimes it'll be some other folks, but I just want to make sure that I have some understanding of what people feel like the issues are, what people feel like contributes to the data that I'm going to see, and what they think are some possible solutions that you all would like to see implemented in the plan. I've done these before. They were very helpful, and actually I use them, a lot of these sessions, a lot of the suggestions, I use them for the follow-up grant that then I actually had pieces of it funded. So it's really important that I start having these conversations sooner than later and before the end of the year, because also the second round of funding applications are due in January. So if we're going to apply and we want some of these projects potentially funded, that is a way to do it. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't have any questions, but
or comments or thoughts.
as you're talking about funding, the reason I invited Ms. Peaton today is she already does something with the youth, and she also has where she goes in and gives out books to those in the jail and things like that. So I would like for you and her to connect, because as you just mentioned, you might even have some funding that, and some of the stuff she do might wrap right into what we do. She may actually be able to give you something that we could already utilize. I don't know, but that's just a thought that you might.
And let me be clear, Linnea doesn't have funding.
Okay.
We will be applying, or you can, again, this is a decision you all have to make in terms of Goldsboro-Wayne, but you all can apply for another round of funding. This is what I did before. And that funding, we could say somebody, I think Miss Barnes had an idea. She wanted to go to the the lynching museum, I think in Alabama. I thought that was a great idea, and I thought that would be a great educational piece that really could be really support or exciting for young people. So I mentioned it to the chief and I said, hey, should we think about that in the future? So that's what I'm saying, that we could put these kind of activities into the next cycle grant together, so it could be a collective.
Well, what is the funding that we already got from the grant funding?
The grant
funding just those advertisements that the police station or the police department is great? I mean, what what is the current funding? That's the question I've been asking all along. What is it?
So
We
I
know
sent
that you
out,
already got funding, or
But
not
you,
you,
I
but.
sent out a long
Yeah.
time ago, probably the first or second month that we were meeting,
Mhm,
an actual budget narrative.
mhm.
And it literally has everything that they're spending money on.
Okay, I'll go back and.
And
look at
it's
that.
basically for this round, it's just a planning grant. And then the second is actually what I would be considering, or you should be all thinking about, as implementation. So it would be like, this grant is just about training and planning and us meeting is what this grant is for.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts? Any other thoughts? Okay. All hearts and minds are clear? Okay. All right. So again, I would like if you could do me a favor, everybody who has recommendations of groups that you would like me to have conversations with, please send me an email and I will love to schedule those. We'll obviously try to meet via Zoom and get that going. Anything else? I think that's pretty close to the end of our agenda. The last thing is obviously training. We'll get those training things done. And then our DMC 101 will be on the 24th from 1 to 5, right? And will we have our next meeting on the 17th as normal, or will we just meet on the 24th? Here's a decision you all have to make.
I recommend just to do the 24th.
And I concur. I would just suggest that the co-chairs of the group of 5 meet so that we can get together those particular dates for the racial equity training.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea. Is that okay with everybody? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Our next meeting will be on the 24th for the DMC 101 training. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll have a flyer that we can send out to people to get people registered for the training, because we really need, please everybody make sure you sign in. If you didn't sign in already, please sign in for the grant. We need to have head counts for these meetings. And I put the link in the text box, in the chat box. If anybody else has any other questions or announcements. Questions or announcements, anybody at all? I see you, Miss Cynthia. I'm good. All right, then. I think we're done for the day. Thank you all so much. I know it was a lot of information being thrown around today. It was a little bit more of a housekeeping meeting, but I appreciate everybody's time.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
I will. I was going to say, does anybody, or Miss Matthews, I see you popped in late. If you want to say goodbye or thank you for coming, feel free.
Yeah, we really appreciate, people coming back. It seems like the summer was very long, but getting back involved, and hopefully, we can get this to grow. Especially with our trainings and the word can spread, and we can really impact this community in a positive way.
All right, thank you so much. Please send me an email if you have any ideas for me, please. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Well, thank you.
Do you have any questions? Let me know.